All right, well, I hope everyone enjoyed, and now we can get into the educational part, fill in some blanks for people who weren't able to answer all of these questions. Let's get started. So, Android core knowledge. When you create an Android activity, what is the one life cycle function that you must override? So, traditionally speaking, everyone, we should all be pretty much in agreement here. Maybe a few people didn't get this one, but this is a softball question. onCreate. Now, someone did mention that there might be a way to skip onCreate recently. I'm not actually familiar with that. So whoever mentioned that, then certainly add some detail there, because generally speaking, unless you're using some specific tool, you have to implement onCreate. So, anyways, let's move on. Question number 2. Suppose that a user has activity A open and running in the foreground, and then a new dialog or another activity, we will call B, is opened, either whatever, dialog B, or either a dialog or for activity B, and brought to the foreground, and then the person navigates back to activity A. Upon returning to the foreground, will activity A's onCreate function be called? I expect you to briefly explain your answer. Now, I think as far as I'm aware, the answer I would give, let me put it this way, is that typically speaking, in this situation, based on what I was given, probably onCreate would not be called. Let me pull up the Android lifecycle diagram just so everyone can see what we're talking about here. But I think the truth is that it can actually be a little bit situationally dependent if we're getting really specific. So just for people learning, so activity A, just to run through what occurs here, activity A goes from onCreate, as we just talked about before, goes into onStart, onResume, and then it's running. So it's in the started state. Now, the user opens up a dialog or another activity, or maybe they have like the split screen thing going on, something like that, and the activity is no longer in the foreground. That's a specific term. I won't spend a lot of time here. Now, typically speaking, if the user opened a dialog or an activity that's sort of partially obscuring the activity A, generally speaking, onDestroy will not be called. Typically what'll happen is onPause and onStop, kind of slightly depending on the use case, will be called. And as you can see by these arrows, I apologize, but I either have to zoom totally out or totally in, unless maybe I can manually type this. No, I can't. Typically what will happen is that you'll either go into onStart or onResume, and onCreate will not be called. Now, that's typically the answer I'd be looking for, but the truth is that sometimes, even in the situation I described, onCreate might still get called. So this was a bit of a trickier question. As an interviewer, I wouldn't mind if someone gave, like, a lot of people were saying no, onCreate definitely won't be called. Sometimes it will, but I'm pretty happy with that answer because it means you have a relative understanding of the Android lifecycle. Now, question number 3, suppose you have a large and indeterminate data set. What we're asking here is, should you render or display on the screen large and indeterminate data sets with a ListView? Just to get this really, just to explain it really simply, no, that's probably a bad idea. Some people said, no, you should use a recycler view or something like that. Some people pulled up the, or brought up the view holder pattern, so you could hypothetically implement your own ListView classes. The general thing I wanted to see here is I wanted to know why you shouldn't use a plain old list view. Okay, so yeah, so in this particular case, why shouldn't we use a list view for large and indeterminate data sets? One or two people really got the answer I was looking for, which is that the thing about large and indeterminate data sets is that inflating views is a very costly operation for memory and resources. So that is the whole point of the recycler view, is we're reducing the number of times we're inflating new layouts. We're recycling them. So some people got quite specific there. Some people just said, no, you shouldn't use a list view. You should use a recycler view or something like that. That's correct. So for the people who really gave a detailed answer, good job. Question number 4. In simple terms, or by describing a specific situation, what is a memory leak? Most people pretty much got this. And the answer here, I think we're all pretty much in agreement. So the garbage collector, so Android applications, they run on a JVM, at least for now. And the JVM has this thing called the garbage collector. But what we're talking about, the general answer that people gave here is that a reference, so an object in memory, virtual memory space, is being held, let me rephrase this. An object in memory space is being held on to, i.e. referenced, when it should not be. So it's something that should be getting garbage collected, but because of how you've structured your code, the references you're using, because some other thing that still exists is holding a reference to it, the garbage collector isn't touching it. It doesn't want to get rid of it. That's a memory leak. Pro tip, look up leak canary. So that's one example. Now, this is an important one. It actually has a very simple answer. Why is it especially important to be worried about leaking classes which extend context? This one's actually, let me pull up the documentation for context on Android, and this one's actually pretty simple. Okay, which mode am I in here? Yep. So, context is enormous. This is a gigantic class. Look at all of the stuff that it does. Thousands and thousands. It holds has reference to system services, resources, broadcast receivers. There's so many things that classes which extend context do. So when you leak a class that is that enormous, then you're leaking something which, I basically just said it. You're leaking a reference which is just a huge thing in memory space. Now, an important point here. Sometimes application context, typically as far as I'm aware, there's only ever going to be one application context for any one running Android process. So in some cases, it's about knowing which context to use. But when we're talking about activity context, that would be one case in particular where I'd be really worried about having memory leaks. Now, number 8, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. Simply put, most people gave a good general answer. One person in particular used the approach that I would use, which is, yes, you do have a broadcast receiver and alarm manager, and then you need to use notifications and potentially a foreground service, it's called, and that ties into using notifications. That's how I solve that problem with my applications. Now, there might be a way of dealing with this that is slightly different. This was kind of the stack that I was looking for, but it's a bit of a vague question, and it can depend on the things. But you people who haven't looked into this, you need to be careful, because you can't do what you used to be able to do. Like, you used to be able to just use I never used Work Manager, but you could use like an alarm manager and you could start an activity from the background. You can't do that anymore. And that actually broke one of my applications and I had to fix it. So just be aware, there are tight restrictions. Somebody posted, there's an article in the documentation, you'll want to read about this because this can break your applications if you don't know what you're doing. Anyways, okay, let's move into concurrency. Hopefully everyone's clear on this. So suppose you're writing an application and some of the things here, I think everyone basically got this correct. Your application can hang or stop responding. Your application can hang or stop responding, and after a certain period, some people got this correct, it'll cause an application not responding, also known as an ANR. So what happens after, I think it's like 5 seconds or something, the Android platform will interrupt your process and it'll show the user an application not responding dialog, and it will ask the user, hey, this thing isn't responding, do you want to close it? And I think after a certain point it will probably just close it itself. So all this translates to a bad user experience. So that's kind of the answer there. Harish says heap overflow. It's not necessarily an overflow. It's just maybe you have some file that you're downloading or some file that you're loading from the disk, or you have some computation, or maybe you just screwed up and you have an infinite loop or something. And if you don't do threading or concurrency properly, then you might not have an overflow of memory. That could happen, but your application, the user interface is actually being blocked if you don't do this properly. So it's literally not responding to user input. I could go into more detail about that another time, but let's kind of move on. Think of a time in the past when you had some kind of indeterminate task, and what tools and approaches did you use to create a solution which preserved a good experience? So in this case, this was kind of a silly question in retrospect. I kind of just wanted to know, what do you normally use? What do you like to use for solving concurrency? Everyone pretty much gave good answers. And this is a lot to do with personal preference. We had RX Java, coroutines, executors. I don't know if anyone actually mentioned this. You could use threads. That's a little bit low level, but you could use that. You could, async task is actually a valid answer. Oh, it is. I didn't actually realize it was deprecated. Thank you. Okay, so correction. I didn't know. Async task is deprecated, so definitely don't use it. Thank you. This is why I appreciate having other people here. Okay, so yeah, just scratch that off the list entirely. Okay, number 3. This is more of a speculative question than a right or wrong question. So what I was trying to get at here, and I did like a lot of the answers I saw here, I wanted to know, how do you choose? How do you decide between RxJava, coroutines, executors, threads, and definitely not async task? I wanted to know, how do you actually think about your project requirements? And I saw a lot of answers that I liked. Now, some people, you know what? If you're really, really comfortable with RxJava, like you're just totally fluent in it and you're just happy using that everywhere and anywhere, that's okay. That's not necessarily a wrong answer. But some people said it depends on the size and the complexity, the team I'm working on. Some people did, talk about memory and performance and stuff like that. And that was really, in general, what I was looking for is, how do you reason about these things? So I really liked the answers I saw there, which was great. But we're not being dogmatic. I don't want to hear any particular approach, except I really don't want to hear async task now. But yeah. Okay, hopefully everyone's clear on that. I know I'm going through this quickly, but I hope people don't mind. Let's go into software engineering basics. So I'm not going to go through this whole thing here. This question was set up for people who aren't aware of runtime and space complexity, which can be represented using big O notation. And some of you who aren't familiar, you would have seen people writing that there's some disagreement here, but they would have said that this function here runs in O of 1, which is big O notation for constant time. And then some people said, I got some different answers here. So some people said that this block here, I saw different answers. Some people said O of n, which means linear time. Some people said O, what was it, n log n, I think? N log n, I believe. Now, yeah, my answer is that this is linear time. I think what some people maybe got caught up on is they thought I was talking about a binary search, and I realized in retrospect, I might have I mean, you have to pay attention to what I was asking and read the code, but I did mention that it was alphabetically sorted. So maybe some people kind of, this was kind of an irrelevant thing, and I didn't mean to trick anyone, but in my opinion, the correct answer is O of n, linear time. So what that means in plain English is that the time it takes for this function to complete, the runtime, is directly proportionate to the size of A, i.e. how many elements, which we call that n, the number of elements, or whatever you want to call it, in in this case, the array. So it's directly proportionate. So anyways, just yeah, a little point here. So in my opinion, it's not n log n. It is O of n, because it's directly proportionate. All right. Now, the purpose of this question, even if you didn't answer it using this notation, I don't frankly give a shit. I just wanted to see, do you understand that the runtime for certain functions is proportionate to the size of the data set? That's really all I wanted to hear. And I think Peter gave a good answer there. All I wanted to hear is, yeah, one is constant, one is relative to the data size, basically, data set. Okay, now number 2, this is just a very classic question you'll get. This is like basically algorithms 101. Suppose we have a collection, it's got 1 million elements, and that element, every element is indexed, and it's ordered from least to greatest. How would you find and locate a specific element in this collection based on an index? So the standard answer here is you would use a binary search. There might even be a more efficient way you could do this, but let's just briefly explain why binary search is a good idea here. So here's a cool thing. So intuitively, and I think some people gave this answer, and if you gave this answer, this is good. I appreciate that. So there's an iteration search, which means we write a loop and keep looking through until we find a match. And the loop functions basically like, if you imagine the index, it's just index plus plus every loop. So we just look one by one through the thing. Now, the thing about this is that in big O notation, we are worried about the worst case scenario, typically speaking. And the worst case scenario here is, it is big O of n. So the runtime will be proportionate to the size of the data set. But the worst case scenario is that the element you want is the millionth element. So we have a data set of, in this case, 1 million elements, and if you use an iteration search, you've got to search through the whole data set before you'll locate it. Using a binary search is really cool. Sorry, let me correct this. Binary search works in, I believe it's ON log n. I think you just write that like that. And so this is a logarithmic function. So the cool thing, and how binary search works, I won't go into much detail at all here. In binary search, you start in the middle, and then you'll ask, is the index of the key, the target, the thing we're trying to find, lower or higher? If it's higher, you cut the data set in half again, and then you keep doing that check. And so instead of looking at the whole data set, we're cutting the problem in half every time. So login, thank you. So yeah, I appreciate that. And hey, I make mistakes here too. So how does this actually work? Well, in a data set with 1 million items, a binary search will only ever, and please correct me if I'm wrong because I'm bad at remembering these specific details, a binary search will only ever need to perform 19 lookups to find the element. I believe the number is 19, but if that's wrong, it's somewhere around there. 19 lookups to find any element. I won't go into more detail here, and it's something like that. So it doesn't matter where the element you're looking for is. If you write a binary search to find the element instead of an iteration search, you'll only ever need to check 19 times. 19 iterations. Hopefully that is, and that's how we get the logarithmic function. So true or false, you should always use the data structure which takes up the least amount of memory to solve any given problem. My answer is false, and the reason why is that when n is guaranteed to be small, so i.e. we're never working with a big data set, I would prefer to use the data structure which is easiest for me to work with based on the situation / problem I'm trying to solve. Now, some people gave some other very valid points on this. This is my opinion, and this is how I would approach this. The thing about using the most efficient data structure with respect to just the least amount of memory space, some people gave a very good answer here. Sometimes we care more about runtime than memory. I love physics, and one thing I really like about physics and computing is that we see the interplay of space and time. In this case, we're talking about memory space, and here we're talking about runtime. But just as in physics, we see two sides of the same phenomena. A solution which is really good with respect to space sometimes isn't so efficient with respect to time, and vice versa. So we shouldn't always prioritize space, but it depends on the situation. Okay, moving on. If you had to model a complex network or system, such as roadways or vehicle traffic, what kind of data structure would you use? Blah, blah, blah. Basically, I would use a graph, and that's pretty much all the answer I was looking for. But also, some people might have an even more complicated answer. I believe Cybershark had, what was it, a grasp? Grasp? Yeah. Sorry, I'm just trolling. But yeah, if the answer to this question was just a graph, then I'm perfectly happy. So behavioral questions. These are my favorites. Ryan's getting a little tired, but we'll get through this, folks. Okay, so suppose you're working on a product and you're working under a team leader. So the gist of this question is your team leader gives you an approach to solving a problem. You think you have a more efficient approach. How do you proceed? So here's the thing. Let me speak from me as it. So let me give you my answer based on how I would behave as a team leader. My job as a team leader is to do, in general, two things: to provide direction when it's needed, and secondly, to defer to expert opinions from the members of my team. Simply put, in general, how I live my life is that if someone has a better solution and they can explain it and I agree with it, then I am quite happy to go with that solution, because for the greater good, that's what you need to do. You take your ego out of the fucking situation. And, that's what a good team member does. I don't want to say junior team member, but the subordinate, let's use that word, trusts the leader that, hey, if I think I have a good answer, I can give it to you and you're not going to be an arrogant, egotistical prick. We had different answers, and there's not a right or wrong answer, and these are deliberately vague. Because, yeah, you're right. Maybe your leader is actually a dickhead, in which case you might not want to say anything. Because at the end of the day, if things go wrong based on the approach you were given, well, your leader gave it to you. You were following orders. You were respecting the chain of command. Okay, now moving on. Now we moved into a situation. Okay, so suppose that you did end up speaking with this team leader. The team leader listened to you, so they showed respect to you as an employee. However, they didn't discuss the matter further. So they didn't say, well, the reason why I want you to use this approach is X, Y, and Z. They just respectfully asked you, well, okay, please carry on with the original approach. What do you do? So here's where, and again, I'm going to give my answer here. At this point for me, this is actually about respecting the chain of command. And without knowing more details, it's possible that the team leader knows something that I don't. And if I had respect in this person and I knew they were competent, that's the end of it. I'll use their approach. It's a little bit situational here, but my personality type and the way that I would approach this situation is to respect the chain of command until it's very apparent that doing so is not for the good of the situation. So hopefully that makes sense. And this was for everyone listening, we've got one more question here, and this is a really important one. I chose this situation very specifically. And this is important, especially for the junior developers. Some of my younger friends here, not just junior developers, but some of my people who might not have a whole lot of experience in understanding what is an acceptable degree of disrespect and self-respect. Okay, and I've been in these situations before, and I'll tell you how I dealt with them. You have recently joined a small team of developers, and for the most part, you're all on equal footing, except for one lead developer or one project manager. so you're new in this team and you've had a couple weeks to figure out what's going on, but you haven't been there a long time. One of the team members is being disrespectful. And how this is manifesting is two things. Number one, they don't seem to be very good at their job. In fact, you might think this person, like, you're not even qualified to shine my fucking shoes, and you're telling me how to solve some complicated problem? So that's what we're talking about here. And so there's that. And then they're being really disrespectful. They're cutting you off. They're deliberately in front of everybody trying to throw shade at you. They're disrespecting you. And then you do what you should do when someone criticizes you, and you say to the person politely, well, okay, I might be wrong. I might be wrong here. So you ask them, well, okay, why am I wrong? You don't like my approach. That's okay. I'm an adult. I can deal with that. But what's your suggestion? Why do you think I'm wrong? And then the person just gets more disrespectful. And they don't give you any constructive feedback. Except for the lead developer who has a separate office, the other developers clearly notice what is going on, but they don't intervene or seem open to talking to you about what's going on. They're kind of just like turning oh, that's a big nose, isn't it? They're kind of just turning a blind eye. They have to see what's going on, but no one's stepping up is what I'm saying here. And you're basically on your own now. So we've painted a picture. How do you proceed? And I really actually like the answers I got here. How do you proceed in this situation? So, and again, there isn't one single answer. It depends on the situation. Here's what I would say to anyone, and I've done this before. Basically, what I would do, some people gave exactly the answer I would give. Number one-on-one talk to the individual. And so the first thing, you try and straighten out with the person, because I was in a programming office, and suffice it to say, things didn't work out. The company wasn't right for me. But what a lot of people don't understand about me is I'm a working class dude. I've worked in kitchens with very large and scary men who will scream at you within an inch of your face. I've worked in construction crews where if you start going around disrespecting people, you're going to get punched in the fucking mouth. So, when someone comes up to me and they're not from that world and they start disrespecting me, it's like, homie, you don't even know what you're dealing with here. So, anyways, but I'm not saying you should be violent. That's not what I'm advocating. But what I'm saying here is, I can take a lot. It's not going to bother me. So what I would do is I would pull the person aside, and I wouldn't... Yeah, I've worked under people like Gordon Ramsay. Yeah, I've worked under people like that. I would pull the person aside, and I would politely, and I would make sure I'm in a calm mood. I wouldn't do this when I'm angry. I would pull them aside and say, hey, listen, I'm not sure if you have a problem with me or if I've done something to upset you, but you seem to be kind of disrespecting me a little bit. Did I do something that upset you, or what's going on here, basically? And I wouldn't be aggressive, but I would be straight, what we call a straight shooter. What's your problem, basically? Now, let's assume that fails and the person maybe they said, I'm not having this conversation with you. Whatever, man. So you gave them, you tried to mend the bridge. The next thing I would do, number 2, go to the lead developer or the team leader. And then I would say to this person, hey, listen, I like working here. I don't have any problems. I like the team in general, but there's one individual here who, you know, I'm trying to get along with them, but I don't feel like they're really giving me the respect that I deserve. I might not even mention this individual's name, but I'd bring it up that way and say, and I would ask the lead developer, how do you want me to deal with this situation? Yeah, it's the HR talk. Now, you don't go in there, don't even talk about specific details unless the team leader asks. Just general, put it on the plate. Here's what's happening. How do you want me to solve this situation? And you might even want to mention that I did go and talk to this person. I tried to mend the bridge, and that didn't work. All right. Hopefully, the team leader is a good team leader, and they might come up with a different situation. Probably this person we're talking about, probably everyone in the whole office knows that they're incompetent and knows that they're a dickhead. So you might not even go very much detail, and the team leader will, if the team leader is good and they're aware of what's going on, they'll know how to respond to this, hopefully. Okay, now, number 3. Let's say that doesn't work. However it goes, the team leader doesn't care, doesn't know, doesn't want to hear about it, doesn't propose a solution. Find a new job. Now, I get it. Sometimes you're in a situation where this is the only job you have, and I get it. You might have to just deal with it. And in that case, some people offered the solution. Just don't pay attention to it. Focus on being the best employee you can be, and that's a good answer too. But and yes, awesome, Dev. It is an opinion-based question, and it's situational. But depending on the situation, if you have options, simply put, you got to have some respect for yourself, and you got to stand up for yourself. And I think every human being should have a certain level of disrespect that they just will not tolerate. That's how I live my life. That's my personality coming out. You all think that I'm some happy, positive guy, and for the most part I am, but there's an angry construction worker, kitchen worker inside of here, and most people don't want to meet that person. He can be pretty scary. So that's my opinion.